Adrift in the void, the alien refugee ship shuddered and quaked, its hull groaning under the strain of a failing life support system. Inside, the remaining survivors of the Chalnoth species huddled in terror, their bioluminescent eyes wide with fear. Captain Kide, her face gaunt and weary, stood before them, a fierce determination etched into her features. She had to find a way to save her people, even if it meant sacrificing everything. Light years away, aboard the human vessel Odyssey, Commander Raymond Bell stared at the uncoded distress signal flashing across his screen. The desperation in the alien captain's voice resonated deep within him, echoing his own painful memories of fleeing a war-torn Earth as a child. He knew all too well the agony of watching helplessly as loved ones perished, and now he had a chance to prevent another species from suffering the same fate. But the decision to aid the Chalnoth was not without risk. The alien species was known for their advanced biotechnology, jealously guarded secrets that could shift the balance of power on a galactic scale. Some factions back on Earth would stop at nothing to acquire those secrets, even if it meant sacrificing the lives of the refugees. As the Odyssey raced toward the stranded ship, Raymond knew he was gambling with more than just his own career. On the Chalnoth vessel, Kede fought back despair as she watched her people slowly dying, their once vibrant skin fading to a sickly gray. She had broken every rule, violated the most sacred laws of her people, by reaching out to the humans. Tales of their cruelty and relentless expansion had reached even the isolated Chalnoth. But with no other choice, she had to believe that the humans would show mercy, that they would value life over the lure of advanced technology. As the Odyssey closed in on the crippled ship, Raymond steeled himself for what lay ahead. The fate of two species hung in the balance, and the next few hours would determine whether the Chalnoth found salvation or damnation at the hands of humanity. With a deep breath, he signaled his team to prepare for docking, knowing that the future of both races would be forever changed by this fateful encounter. As the Odyssey's medical team rushed onto the Chalnoth ship, Dr. Ethan Corso couldn't help but gasp at the sight that greeted them. The refugees lay strewn across the vessel's dimly lit corridors, their bioluminescent skin pulsing weakly. Many bore grievous wounds, their blood glowing an eerie blue in the shadows. The air hung thick with the acrid scent of fear and desperation. "My God," Corso muttered, kneeling beside a fallen Chalnoth child. The young refugee's breath came in ragged gasps, her bio-implants flickering erratically. Corso called out to his team, "I need a stabilizer over here, stat!" As the human doctors worked frantically to triage the most critical cases, they marveled at the Chalnoth's extraordinary biology. Bio-implants melded seamlessly with flesh, augmenting and repairing damaged tissues at a rate that defied belief. Regenerative enzymes knitted together gaping wounds before their eyes. Captain Kede watched the humans warily, her hand never straying far from her sidearm. She approached Commander Raymond Bell, her bioluminescent eyes narrowing. "Why are you helping us?" she demanded, her voice thin with exhaustion and suspicion. "What price will you demand for this aid?" Raymond met her gaze steadily, seeing in her fierce protectiveness a reflection of his own grit to save lives. "We're helping because it's the right thing to do," he said softly. "My people once suffered as refugees, cast adrift in the void. We've known the desperation and loss you now face. Many of us feel compelled to aid others in need, to ensure that no one else endures what we once did." Kede searched his face for any sign of deceit, her bioluminescence flickering with uncertainty. "And what of our technology? Our biological secrets? Will you claim them as payment for this mercy?" "No," Raymond insisted, his tone firm and resolute. "You have my word, Captain. The Chalnoth will not be prisoners or test subjects. We offer our help freely, without condition." Kede hesitated, torn between her distrust of the humans and the undeniable evidence of their compassion. With her people's survival hanging by a thread, she knew she had to take a leap of faith. Slowly, she extended her hand to Raymond. "I will hold you to that promise, Commander," she said, her voice heavy with the weight of responsibility. As the two leaders sealed their accord, Dr. Corso and his team continued their desperate struggle to save the Chalnoth. The refugees' resilience astounded the human medics. Even the most grievously injured clung to life with a tenacity that bordered on the miraculous. Corso found himself working alongside a statuesque Chalnoth female, her bioimplants glowing with a mesmerizing intricacy. She introduced herself as Arala, the lead scientist of their clan. Together, they labored to stabilize the critical cases, marveling at the strange synergy between their medical techniques. In the midst of the chaos, Arala shared with Corso the harrowing tale of the Chalnoth's flight from their doomed homeworld. A genetically engineered virus, unleashed by a rival clan seeking to control their biotechnology, had swept through their population like a scythe. It targeted females with merciless precision, decimating their numbers and shattering their society. Only a few thousand of us survived the initial onslaught, Arala recounted, her voice hollow with grief. We fled in whatever ships we could find, leaving behind everything we had ever known. Corso listened in horror, his heart wrenching at the parallels to Earth's own history. He saw in the Chalnoth's plight an echo of the oppression and forced exodus that had scarred humanity. In that moment, he vowed to do everything in his power to protect and aid these refugees who had lost so much. As the Chalnoth slowly regained strength under the humans' care, an uneasy alliance began to take shape between the two species. But even as bonds of trust started to form, unseen currents of treachery and avarice threatened to drag both peoples into a vortex of destruction. As the Chalnoth refugees settled into their temporary quarters aboard the Odyssey, Commander Raymond Bell couldn't shake the nagging sense of unease that had taken root in his gut. The distress call that had drawn them away from the alien ship felt off, a discordant note in an already complex situation. "Lieutenant Gaines, you have the bridge," Raymond said, his voice tight with tension. "I'm staying behind on the Chalnoth vessel. Something doesn't add up, and I want to be here if trouble comes knocking." Gaines nodded, his face a mask of professional detachment. "Understood, sir. We'll investigate the distress call and report back immediately." As the Odyssey disengaged from the Chalnoth ship, Raymond made his way to the alien vessel's command center. He found Captain Keed hunched over a flickering console, her bioluminescent skin casting an eerie glow in the dim light. "Commander," she acknowledged, her eyes narrowing, "you should be with your ship." Raymond shook his head. "My instincts tell me I'm needed here. Call it a hunch, but I think we might be walking into a trap." Before Keed could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. On the main view screen, a swarm of unmarked vessels materialized from the inky void of space, bearing down on their position with predatory intent. "By the First Mother," Keid breathed, her luminescence flaring with alarm. "They've found us." Raymond lunged for the communications panel, hailing the Odyssey. Static crackled through the speakers, punctuated by bursts of garbled noise. "They're jamming us," he growled, banging his hand on the console. Keed's voice rang out over the ship's intercom, her tone sharp with urgency. "All Chalnoth to the safe rooms immediately. This is not a drill. Seal yourselves in and await further instructions." In the medical bay, Dr. Ethan Corso's head snapped up at the sound of the alarms. He turned to Arala, the Chalnoth scientist, whose eyes were wide with fear. "We can't let them get your research," Corso said, his mind racing. "The symbiotic microbes, if they fall into the wrong hands—" Arala nodded, her movements frantic as she gathered up vials and data crystals. "Here," she said, pressing a small container into Corso's hand. "A sample of the microbes. Hide it. Protect it with your life." As Arala hurried to join her people in the safe rooms, Corso concealed the precious sample in a hidden compartment of his medical kit. He could only pray it would be enough. On the bridge, Raymond and Keed watched in helpless fury as the raiders' ships latched onto the Chalnoth vessel, cutting torches flaring to life against the hull. "The bridge controls are locked out," Keid snarled, her claws scraping against the unresponsive console. "We're trapped in here." Raymond's mind raced, searching for a solution. His gaze fell on the airlock near the rear of the bridge, and a desperate plan began to form. "We need to take the fight to them," he said, turning to Keed. "EVA to their ship. Sabotage it from the inside. It's our only shot." Keed's luminescent eyes met his, filled with a mix of doubt and commitment. "And why should I trust you with my life, human?" Raymond held her gaze steadily. "Because right now, I'm all you've got." For a long moment, Cade said nothing. Then, with a sharp nod, she moved toward the airlock. "If we die out there, Commander, I'll kill you myself." As they donned EVA suits and prepared to venture into the vacuum of space, the sound of metal tearing echoed through the ship. The raiders had breached the hull. Raymond and Keed shared a final look before cycling the airlock. As the outer doors hissed open, they launched themselves into the star-studded abyss, propelling themselves toward the nearest raider vessel. Enemy fire lanced past them, superheated plasma sizzling against the void. Raymond's heart thundered in his chest as they closed in on their target, the raider ship's airlock looming before them. With practiced precision, they bypassed the outer lock and slipped inside. Alarms blared as the raiders realized their ship had been infiltrated. Raymond and Cade raced through the corridors, dispatching any crew they encountered with swift efficiency. They barricaded themselves in the engine room, Raymond's fingers flying over the unfamiliar controls as he initiated an overload sequence in the ship's reactor. Keed stood guard at the door, her alien weapon humming with lethal energy. "How long?" she asked, her voice tense. Raymond's eyes never left the console. 2 minutes, maybe less. Outside, the sounds of the raiders trying to break through the barricade grew louder. Raymond's hand hovered over the final command, sweat beading on his brow. "Now or never," he muttered and pressed the button. The reactor core pulsed with blinding light, alarms screaming as systems began to fail. Raymond grabbed Keed's arm, pulling her toward an emergency escape pod. "Time to go," he shouted over the din. As they jettisoned away from the doomed raider ship, a massive explosion rocked the area. The shockwave sent their tiny pod tumbling end over end, Raymond and Keed clinging to each other as the stars whirled dizzyingly around them. When the pod finally stabilized, they saw the Odyssey returning, its weapons blazing as it drove off the remaining raiders. Relief washed over Raymond, tempered by the knowledge that this battle was a long way to go. As they were brought aboard the Odyssey, Dr. Corso rushed to treat their injuries. The adrenaline of their daring mission began to fade, replaced by a bone-deep weariness. Raymond's first officer approached, her face grave. "Sir, we have a problem. Lieutenant Gaines is missing, and there was an unauthorized shuttle launch during the attack." The commander's eyes narrowed, his mind already racing to connect the dots. The conspiracy ran deeper than he'd imagined, and now Gaines was in the wind with who knew what information about the Chalnoth. He turned to Cade, who stood tall despite her injuries, her luminescence pulsing with revitalized commitment. "Captain," Raymond said, his voice low and intense, "I think our troubles are just beginning." Raymond's suspicions crystallized into certainty as he absorbed the news of Gaines's disappearance. He turned to Keed, his expression grim. "We need to prepare for—" A blinding flash erupted outside the viewports, followed by a bone-jarring shudder that rocked the Odyssey. Alarms blared as systems across the ship flickered and died. "Electromagnetic pulse!" shouted the tactical officer, frantically working her unresponsive console. "Weapons and engines are offline." Before Raymond could issue orders, the ship lurched violently. The sickening screech of metal on metal echoed through the hull as Gaines's assault team forced their way aboard. "All hands prepare to repel boarders," Raymond commanded, drawing his sidearm. But it was too late. The bridge doors exploded inward in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Smoke billowed into the room as black-clad figures swarmed through the opening, weapons raised. "Stand down!" Gaines's voice rang out as he strode onto the bridge, his face a mask of cold commitment. "It's over, Raymond." Raymond met his former officer's gaze, anger and betrayal burning in his eyes. "Why, Gaines? What could possibly justify this?" Gaines sneered. "You're too soft, Raymond. The Chalnoth tech could revolutionize humanity. We can't let your misplaced compassion deny us that advantage." As Gaines's team subdued the bridge crew, Raymond's mind raced. He caught Keed's eye, silently willing her to understand. She gave an almost imperceptible nod before being roughly shoved to her knees alongside the human officers. Aboard the Chalnoth vessel, Cade paced anxiously. The sudden silence from the Odyssey set her nerves on edge. She barked orders to her crew, her bioluminescence pulsing with urgency. "Plot a course to the nearest habitable system," she commanded. "Be ready to jump at my signal." Arla burst onto the bridge, her eyes wide with fear. Captain, the humans— I know, Keed cut her off. Begin biostasis procedures immediately. We may need to preserve our people for an extended period. As the Chalnoth scrambled to enact their contingency plans, a transmission crackled to life. Gaines's face filled the view screen, his expression triumphant. Chalnoth vessel, this is Lieutenant Gaines. Your human allies have been neutralized. Surrender your ship and technology immediately, or we will open fire. Keed's luminescence flared defiantly. We will never yield to your tyranny, human. Our people have suffered too much to bow before yet another oppressor. Gaines's eyes narrowed. Then you leave me no choice. Prepare to— Wait, Keed interrupted. I propose a parley. Surely we can reach an agreement that benefits us both. A tense silence stretched between them. Finally, Gaines nodded. Very well. You have 1 hour to come aboard the Odyssey and state your case. As the transmission cut off, Cade turned to Arala. Prepare a sample of the symbiotic microbes. It's time we evened the odds. Aboard the Odyssey, Raymond watched helplessly as Cade was escorted onto the bridge. Her eyes darted around the room, assessing the situation. I'm here to negotiate, she announced, her voice steady despite the weapons trained on her. Gaines smirked. There's nothing to negotiate. Your technology for your lives. It's that simple. As Keed argued, stalling for time, Arala slipped away from her guards. She made her way to an environmental control panel, her movements quick and precise. With trembling hands, she released the microbes into the ship's life support system. The effect was almost immediate. The Chalnoth prisoners began to convulse, their bodies glowing with an intense blue light. Before Gaines and his men could react, the aliens' physiology transformed. Muscles bulged, skin hardened, and their eyes blazed with newfound power. Chaos erupted on the bridge as the enhanced Chalnoth tore through their restraints. Gaines shouted orders, but his voice was drowned out by the sounds of combat. Raymond seized the opportunity, tackling Gaines to the ground. They grappled fiercely, rolling across the deck as alarms blared all around them. A stray energy blast sizzled past, striking a nearby console. The explosion sent shrapnel flying. Raymond felt a sharp pain in his side but fought through it, struggling to subdue Gaines. Keed appeared above them, her enhanced strength easily lifting Gaines off Raymond. She slammed the traitorous human against the wall, her luminescent eyes burning with fury. It's over, she growled. Gaines' men, overwhelmed by the Chalnoth's sudden transformation, began to retreat. Their leader snarled in frustration, activating a concealed communicator. Base, we need immediate extraction. As Gaines' remaining forces fled the Odyssey, Keed rushed to Raymond's side. Blood seeped from a deep wound in his abdomen, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Stay with me, human, Keed urged, applying pressure to the injury. Your fight is not over yet. Arala appeared, her face etched with concern. Captain, we must go. The human reinforcements will be here soon, and the Odyssey is crippled. Cade's luminescence dimmed with sorrow as she looked at Raymond. We cannot stay, but I swear to you, this is not the end. As the Chalnoth prepared to depart, Arala knelt beside the wounded commander. I will find a way to heal you, she promised, her voice thick with emotion, even if it cost me my life. The Chalnoth ship disengaged from the Odyssey, its engines flaring to life. As they made the jump to their refuge planet, Keid stood at the viewport, watching the disabled human vessel grow smaller in the distance. This is only the beginning, she murmured, her luminescence pulsing with dedication. We will return, and those who chose cruelty over compassion will face the consequences of their actions. The stars streaked past as the Chalnoth vessel leapt into the unknown, leaving behind a conflict that was far from driven. The Chalnoth vessel shuddered violently as it tore through hyperspace, systems failing and alarms blaring. Keid gripped the command console, her luminescence flickering with the strain of keeping her battered ship together. Arala, status report, she barked. The science officer's fingers danced across her interface. We're approaching the coordinates, Captain, but our structural integrity is at critical levels. We may not survive re-entry. Keid's teeth clenched. We have no choice. Prepare for emergency landing procedures. The ship burst into real space, the verdant planet looming before them. As they plummeted through the atmosphere, the hull groaned ominously. Cade caught glimpses of lush forests and towering mountains through the viewports before impact. The crash landing was brutal. Metal screamed as the ship plowed through dense vegetation, finally coming to rest in a steaming furrow of upturned earth. For a moment all was silent save for the hiss of ruptured conduits. Then a blood-curdling shriek pierced the air. Cade staggered to her feet, disoriented. Through the shattered viewports, she saw movement in the surrounding jungle. Massive reptilian shapes converged on the crash site, acid dripping from razor-sharp fangs. "Evacuate!" she roared. "All hands, abandon ship!" The Chalnoth poured from the wreckage, only to be met by a hail of corrosive spittle. Screams of agony filled the air as the acid ate through armor and flesh alike. Cade watched in horror as her people were cut down, their weapons useless against the onslaught. Dr. Corso emerged from the ship, his medical kit clutched tightly. He dove for cover, narrowly avoiding a glob of acid. "We need to get to higher ground," he shouted to Cade over the chaos. She nodded grimly, gathering the survivors. "Fall back to that ridge. Move!" They fought their way through the underbrush, the predators in hot pursuit. Cade's heart sank as she saw how few of her people remained. Those who survived were gravely wounded, their bioluminescence dim and faltering. Arala stumbled, clutching a data pad to her chest. Cade hauled her to her feet, half carrying her up the slope. "The microbes," Arala gasped. "I've been analyzing them. They might be our only hope." They reached the relative safety of a rocky outcropping. Corso immediately set to work on the wounded, his face grim as he assessed their injuries. "I don't have enough supplies," he said, voice tight with frustration. "These wounds are beyond anything I've seen." Arala pushed herself up, her eyes bright with feverish intensity. "The symbiotic microbes. If we can modify them, boost their regenerative properties." Cade's luminescence pulsed with renewed hope. "Do it, whatever it takes." As Arala and Corso worked feverishly to refine the microbes, Cade organized the remaining Chalnoth into a defensive perimeter. The predators circled below, their inhuman shrieks echoing off the rocks. Hours passed. The attacks grew more frequent, more desperate. Cade watched helplessly as more of her people fell, their bodies dissolving in pools of alien acid. Finally, Arla approached, holding a vial of shimmering liquid. "It's ready. But Captain, we don't know the long-term effects. This could change us forever." Cade took the vial, her luminescence pulsing with unwavering determination. "We're out of options. Administer the treatment." The enhanced microbes worked swiftly. Wounded Chalnoth convulsed as their bodies accepted the symbiotes, skin knitting closed and bones mending. But the changes didn't stop there. Muscles bulged, growing denser. Skin hardened into an armored carapace. Eyes blazed with newfound strength. Cade felt the change ripple through her own body, power coursing through her veins. She faced her transformed people, their bioluminescence burning bright with furious energy. "Now," she growled, "we fight back." The counterattack was swift and merciless. Enhanced Chalnoth tore through the predators with terrifying efficiency. But even with their newfound abilities, they were vastly outnumbered. Cade realized they needed a new strategy. "Arla, analyze the local flora and fauna. Find anything we can use as a weapon." The science officer set to work, studying the alien ecosystem. Days passed in a blur of constant battle. The Chalnoth's numbers dwindled, but slowly they began to turn the tide. Genetically engineered plant toxins weakened the predators. Domesticated pack animals, bred for viciousness, bolstered their ranks. But the cost was horrific. For every victory, more Chalnoth lives were lost. On a scouting mission, Cade discovered the ruins of an ancient city, hidden beneath the planet's surface. As they explored the crumbling structures, they found a control center filled with advanced technology. Arala's eyes widened as she deciphered the alien interfaces. "Captain, this system, it can alter the planet's climate. We could neutralize the entire ecosystem." Cade hesitated, the weight of the decision heavy on her shoulders. To save her people, she would have to destroy an entire world. With a heavy heart, she gave the order. The ancient machines hummed to life, and the sky above darkened. Temperatures plummeted, and a creeping stillness spread across the land. The predator attacks ceased as the planet entered a dormant state, but as Cade surveyed the cost of their victory, she felt no joy. Countless Chalnoth had perished, and those who remained were forever changed. As the survivors began the monumental task of building a new home, Cade received a dire warning from their long-range sensors. A human fleet approached, led by Gaines's raiders and accompanied by Deckard's pirate allies. Cade's luminescence flared with cold fury. The lieutenant's obsession had driven him to rally other corrupt factions, all eager to claim the Chalnoth's biological secrets for themselves. She turned to her weary, traumatized people. They had already endured so much, but now they faced an even greater threat. "Prepare for battle," Cade commanded, her voice resonating with iron commitment. "We will not surrender all we have sacrificed to these human vultures." As the Chalnoth fortified their positions, Corso and Arala raced against time. They worked tirelessly to develop biological countermeasures, seeking ways to neutralize humanity's technological advantage. The human fleet drew ever closer. Cade stood atop the ancient city's highest spire, watching the sky for the first signs of the impending invasion. Her people had claimed this harsh world at terrible cost. Now they would defend it with every ounce of fury and skill they possessed. The final battle for the Chalnoth's survival loomed on the horizon, promising to be more devastating than anything they had faced before. The sky above the Chalnoth colony darkened as Gaines's fleet entered orbit. Cade's luminescence pulsed with iron will as she surveyed the makeshift defenses. Arala burst from the underground complex, her eyes wide with excitement. "Captain, you need to see this," she said, leading Cade back into the ruins. Deep within the ancient city, they stood before a vast chamber filled with dormant, robotic forms. Arla's fingers danced across a control panel, bringing the facility to life with a low hum. "These drones," Arla explained, "they're compatible with our symbiotic microbes. We can create an army." Cade's mind raced with possibilities. How quickly can we activate them? Hours, maybe less. But Captain, the strain on our limited resources— "Do it," Cade ordered. "We have no choice." As the Chalnoth worked feverishly to awaken their mechanical defenders, light years away, Commander Raymond Bell's eyes snapped open. He found himself in a dingy holding cell aboard one of Gaines's ships, his body racked with pain from his partially healed wounds. Footsteps approached. The cell door slid open, revealing Dr. Corso. The doctor glanced nervously down the corridor before entering. "Commander, we don't have much time," Corso whispered, helping Raymond to his feet. "Gaines is distracted with the invasion preparations. This is our chance." They slipped through the ship's corridors, narrowly avoiding patrols. In a deserted hangar bay, they found a small group of human officers and crew, those who had refused to join Gaines's mutiny. "Commander on deck," one of them announced, snapping to attention. Raymond straightened, pushing through the pain. "At ease. What's our status?" A young lieutenant stepped forward. "Sir, we've managed to access some of the ship's systems. We can cause localized failures, maybe even disable weapons and shields temporarily." "Good work," Raymond nodded. "We need to coordinate with the other loyalist cells. Our priority is to cripple this fleet before it can engage the Chalnoth." As Raymond and his team put their plan into motion, Gaines stood on the bridge of his flagship, a cruel smile playing across his face. The planet loomed large in the view screen. "All ships prepare to open fire," he commanded. "Let's show these aliens what happens when they defy humanity." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Consoles sparked and systems failed across the fleet. Gaines snarled in frustration as his carefully laid plans began to unravel. On the planet's surface, Cade watched in awe as swarms of newly activated biodrones rose into the sky, forming a protective barrier around the colony. The first salvos from Gaines's crippled ships splashed harmlessly against their shields. The drones struck back, launching waves of genetically engineered microbes that ate through hull plating and disrupted ship systems. Gaines's fleet reeled from the unexpected counterattack. Raymond seized the opportunity, leading his loyalists in a daring assault to seize control of key vessels. Ship after ship fell to the saboteurs, their weapons turned against their former allies. The space above the Chalnoth world became a furious melee of energy weapons, bio-attacks, and desperate hand-to-hand combat as boarding parties clashed throughout the fleet. On the ground, Kaid coordinated the evacuation of her people, knowing they couldn't hold out indefinitely against the human onslaught. She watched with a mix of hope and trepidation as the commandeered human ships provided covering fire, buying precious time for the Chalnoth to escape. As the battle reached its crescendo, Raymond's voice crackled over the comm channels. "This is Commander Bell to all Chalnoth forces. We've taken control of the primary assault ships. Gaines is on the run. Hold your positions, we'll cover your retreat." Kaid's luminescence flared with a complex mix of emotions. They had survived, but at a terrible cost. As the last of her people boarded the evacuation ships, she caught sight of a small vessel streaking away from the battle. Gaines, fleeing to fight another day. In the aftermath of the battle, Raymond's battered ship docked with the Chalnoth Command Center. As the airlock cycled open, he came face to face with Kaid. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, the weight of all they had endured hanging heavy between them. "We have much to discuss," Kaid said finally, her voice thick with exhaustion and weariness. Raymond nodded grimly. "This isn't over. Gaines will be back, and he won't be alone. We've made powerful enemies today." As they walked together towards the command center, both leaders knew that the true challenge was just beginning. They had won the battle, but the war for the future of both their species loomed large on the horizon. The command center's alarms blared as a new threat materialized on their sensors. Kaid's luminescence pulsed with alarm, her warriors tensing for another wave of attacks. But Raymond's eyes widened with recognition as he studied the incoming ship's signatures. "Hold your fire," he ordered, voice tight with urgency. "Those are Earth Force vessels." A familiar voice crackled over the communications channel. "This is Commander Zayden Cruz of the EFS Intrepid. Raymond, you old dog, what kind of mess have you gotten yourself into this time?" Relief washed over Raymond's face. "Zayden, your timing couldn't be better. We're under heavy assault from pirate forces led by Lieutenant Gaines." "Understood. We're moving to engage. Hold tight down there." The sky above the Chalnoth colony erupted in a dazzling display of weapons fire as Cruz's fleet tore into the pirate armada. Kaid watched the battle unfold, her tactical mind racing. "This changes things," she said, turning to Raymond. "But we can't rely solely on your reinforcements. We need a more permanent solution." Arala's eyes lit up. "Captain, the vault, the emergency protocols." Kaid nodded grimly. "Take us there, now." Deep beneath the colony's surface, they stood before a massive door, etched with ancient Chalnoth symbols. Corso ran his hands over the alien technology, marveling at its complexity. "This is it," Arala explained, her fingers dancing across a hidden panel. "A repository of our most advanced biotechnology, to be used only in our darkest hour." The vault groaned open, revealing a cavernous chamber filled with pulsing, organic machinery. At its heart stood a towering reactor, its core swirling with billions of symbiotic microbes. "Can you activate it?" Kaid asked, her voice hushed with awe. Arala nodded, her bioluminescence flickering with purpose. "It will take time, but yes, once online, it can produce autonomous drones and weapons faster than the pirates can destroy them." As Arala and Corso worked feverishly to bring the ancient systems online, the battle raged above. Cruz's ships had evened the odds, but Gaines's forces fought with the desperation of cornered animals. The vault's reactor hummed to life, tendrils of energy arcing through the chamber. Within minutes, the first wave of biodrones emerged from fabrication pods, their bodies a seamless fusion of organic and mechanical components. Kaid's voice rang out over the colony's communication network. "All warriors, prepare to coordinate drone swarms, target pirate landing parties, and provide supporting fire for our human allies." On the ground, Chalnoth soldiers integrated seamlessly with the newly produced drones, their enhanced bodies and symbiotic connections allowing for unprecedented levels of coordination. Pirate ground forces found themselves overwhelmed, caught between the relentless swarm of drones and the fury of the Chalnoth warriors. In orbit, Gaines watched in mounting horror as his carefully laid plans crumbled. His ship's weapon systems sparked and failed, compromised by the saboteurs he had foolishly dismissed. On his command deck's main viewer, he saw a swarm of Chalnoth biodrones tear through his fleet's shields as if they were tissue paper. "Enough!" he snarled, his face contorted with rage. "Prepare the antimatter warheads. If we can't have this world, no one will." But even as the order left his lips, explosions rocked his flagship. Raymond's loyalists, having bided their time, struck with devastating precision. Gaines stumbled as the deck lurched beneath him, claxons screaming warnings of imminent reactor breach. The flagship's destruction sent shockwaves through the pirate fleet. Leaderless and outgunned, they began to break formation, desperate to escape the nightmare they had unwittingly unleashed. But there was nowhere to run. Cruz's reinforcements had encircled the system, cutting off all avenues of retreat. The remaining pirate captains, faced with utter annihilation, had no choice but to power down their weapons and surrender. On the planet's surface, an uneasy quiet settled over the Chalnoth colony. The immediate threat had passed, but the cost had been staggering. As the dust settled, Cade found Raymond overseeing the care of wounded human and Chalnoth alike. "Your people fought with honor," she said, her luminescence pulsing with respect. "We owe you a debt that can never be fully repaid." Raymond met her gaze, his eyes filled with a mix of exhaustion and hope. "Perhaps we can start by building something together, a true alliance, born from the crucible of this conflict." Cade nodded, her mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "Yes, I believe it is time for our peoples to walk a new path, together." As they spoke, the first shuttles from Cruz's fleet began to land, disgorging medical teams and supplies. The long process of healing and rebuilding was just beginning, but for the first time since the Odyssey's ill-fated mission, there was a glimmer of true hope for the future. The colony world bustled with activity as the sun rose over the horizon, casting a warm glow on the bustling city center. Towering structures of gleaming metal and organic components stretched towards the sky, a testament to the fusion of human and Chalnoth ingenuity. Cade stood on a balcony overlooking the metropolis, her luminescence pulsing with contentment. Beside her, Raymond leaned against the railing, his once dark hair now streaked with silver. "Hard to believe it's been 20 years, Raymond mused, his eyes scanning the thriving civilization below. Cade's mandibles clicked in agreement. "Our people have come so far together." Their moment of reflection was interrupted by a young hybrid woman who burst onto the balcony, her skin a mottled mix of human tones and Chalnoth bioluminescence. "Elders," she said, snapping to attention. "I'm Naira. I've been assigned to lead the new strike team." Raymond nodded, studying the young warrior. "At ease, Naira. We've heard good things about your training." Cade's luminescence flickered with concern. "You understand the gravity of your mission? The reports we've received are troubling." Naira's eyebrows furrowed. "I do, Elder. My team is ready. We won't let these extremists undo everything we've built." As Naira departed to brief her team, Raymond turned to Cade. "She reminds me of us all those years ago." Cade's bioluminescence pulsed with a mix of pride and worry. Let us hope her path is less fraught than ours was. Across the galaxy, on a desolate moon orbiting a gas giant, a secret base thrummed with activity. Men and women in unmarked uniforms scurried through sterile corridors, their faces set in unyielding commitment. In a dimly lit laboratory, a figure hunched over a workbench, carefully manipulating a vial of swirling, iridescent liquid. The door hissed open, and a tall man with a scarred face entered. "Doctor," the scarred man growled, "how close are we?" The scientist straightened, turning to face his visitor. "We're in the final stages, Commander Vance. The virus is nearly perfected. Once released, it will render the Chalnoth and their abomination offspring sterile within days." Vance's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Excellent. And the second phase?" "It will take longer, but within months every trace of Chalnoth genetic material will be eradicated from infected planets. Their precious biotechnology will be useless." Vance nodded, his eyes gleaming with fanatical zeal. "Gaines would be proud. We'll finish what he started, and humanity will be pure once more." Alarms blared suddenly, shattering the tense atmosphere. Vance sprinted to a nearby console, his face contorting with rage as he read the incoming reports. "We've been compromised," he snarled. "A strike team has infiltrated our outer defenses. How did they find us?" The scientist clutched the vial protectively. "What are your orders, sir?" Vance's eyes darted between the virus and the flashing alarms. "Prepare for immediate evacuation. We can't risk losing our work now, not when we're so close." As chaos erupted throughout the base, Naira and her team moved swiftly through the shadows. Human and Chalnoth operatives worked in perfect synchronization, disabling security systems and neutralizing guards with ruthless efficiency. Naira tapped her communicator. "Team 2, status report." A gruff voice crackled through the device. "We've secured the hangar bay, but they're prepping ships for evac. Whatever they're working on, they're determined to protect it." "Understood," Naira replied. "Hold your position. We're approaching the main lab now." As they rounded a corner, Naira caught sight of Vance and the scientist hurrying towards an emergency exit, a heavily armored case clutched in the doctor's arms. "Target acquired," Naira whispered, moving to intercept. She raised her weapon, a sleek fusion of human and Chalnoth technology, and took aim. The future of two species hung in the balance as her finger tightened on the trigger. Trigger on the weapon. Time slowed as Naira's enhanced reflexes kicked in. She dove forward, her hybrid body moving with inhuman speed. The air filled with the hiss of plasma bolts as Vance's security team opened fire. Naira rolled, coming up in a crouch behind a fallen console. Her team scattered, taking cover where they could. "Key and Talara, flank left," Naira barked into her comm. "I'll draw their fire." She popped up, squeezing off precise shots with her fusion rifle. 2 guards went down, their chests smoking. Vance and the scientist used the chaos to slip through a heavy blast door. Naira's team converged on the exit, Keon working furiously to bypass the lock. Alarms blared as the base's automated defense systems came online. Turrets dropped from the ceiling, pivoting to target the intruders. "We're out of time," Talara growled, her Chalnoth heritage evident in the bioluminescent patterns pulsing beneath her skin. "Plan B." She slapped an explosive charge on the door. The team dove for cover as the blast tore through reinforced metal. They surged forward into a maze of sterile corridors. The scent of ozone and chemicals assaulted Naira's enhanced senses as they entered the main laboratory. Banks of equipment hummed ominously. In the center stood a massive canister, pulsing with sickly green light. "The bioweapon?" Keon breathed, his eyes wide. A computerized voice echoed through the chamber. "Warning, dispersal sequence initiated. T-minus 5 minutes to atmospheric release." Naira's blood ran cold. "Find a way to shut it down, now!" As her team frantically searched for a kill switch, the far door hissed open. A tall man with a face etched by hate strode in, flanked by heavily armed guards. "I'm afraid that won't be possible," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "The cleansing of your genetic abominations is long overdue." Naira's grip tightened on her weapon. "Obran!" The renegade leader's lips curled into a sneer. "How fitting that you'll bear witness to humanity's salvation, hybrid." He raised a hand, and his soldiers opened fire. Naira's team scrambled for cover as the air filled with deadly energy bolts. The acrid smell of ozone mixed with the metallic tang of spilled blood. Keon cried out as a plasma bolt caught him in the shoulder. He stumbled, colliding with the bioweapon canister. Warning klaxons shrieked as hairline cracks appeared in its casing. "No!" Obran roared. Seizing the moment of distraction, Naira launched herself at the renegade leader. They went down in a tangle of limbs, grappling for dominance. Obran's enhanced strength nearly matched her own as they traded vicious blows. Across the lab, Talara fought to reach the computer terminal. If she could just access the right systems, there might be a chance to... A thunderous explosion rocked the facility. Chunks of ceiling rained down as the orbital bombardment began. Naira's call for support had been answered. In the chaos, Keon struggled to his feet. Green mist seeped from the damaged canister, filling the air with a deadly haze. His eyes met Naira's for a brief, agonizing moment. "I'm sorry," he mouthed. With a burst of desperate strength, Kian heaved the canister towards a nearby isolation chamber. He stumbled after it, slamming the hatch shut just as another explosion rocked the base. "Kian!" Naira screamed, fighting to break free from Oberyn's grip. The renegade leader used her momentary distraction to gain the upper hand. His fingers closed around her throat, squeezing with inhuman strength. Naira's vision began to darken at the edges. A plasma bolt sizzled past, catching Oberyn in the shoulder. He roared in pain, his grip loosening. Talara stood behind him, her weapon raised. "Go!" she shouted to Naira. "I've got the data. We can still stop this." Naira hesitated, torn between pursuing Oberyn and saving her team. Another blast shook the facility, making the decision for her. She sprinted towards Talar as Oberyn and his remaining forces retreated deeper into the complex. "This way," Talara gasped, clutching a data crystal. "There's a mining shaft that might lead to the surface." As they ran, Naira keyed her comm. "Strike team, fall back to extraction point Alpha. Repeat, fall back immediately." They pushed through twisting corridors, the sounds of collapse growing louder behind them. Naira's enhanced senses picked up the scent of fresh air. They were close. A final explosion rocked the tunnel. Naira stumbled, nearly falling. When she looked up, Talara was gone, cut off by a cave-in. "Talara!" she shouted, clawing at the debris. Her friend's voice crackled through the comm, weak but determined. "I'm okay, but I can't get through. There's another way, I think. Go, Naira, complete the mission." Naira's fists clenched. "I'm not leaving you." "You have to," Talara insisted. "I've got a plan. Trust me." With a snarl of frustration, Naira turned and sprinted towards the exit. The ground heaved beneath her feet as she burst into the open air. In the distance, she saw her team's dropship lifting off. A brilliant flash lit up the sky. Naira's eyes widened as she witnessed a dazzling display of bioluminescence spreading through the atmosphere. Somehow, against impossible odds, they had done it. As the dropship swooped low to retrieve her, Naira's gaze remained fixed on the fallen base. She had won a victory, but the cost had been unimaginably high, and somewhere in those ruins, Oberyn still lurked, a threat that would have to be dealt with once and for all. The real work was just beginning. The dust settled over the ruins of Oberyn's secret base. Naira stood motionless, her eyes fixed on the horizon where her team's dropship disappeared into the amber sky. The mission was complete, but victory tasted hollow. Months passed. The Chalnoth human colony world bustled with renewed energy and purpose. The threat of xenophobic extremists had been neutralized, ushering in an era of unprecedented cooperation between the two species. On a crisp morning, crowds gathered in the heart of the metropolis. A grand ceremony was underway, honoring those who had fallen in the struggle for unity. Cade and Raymond, their faces etched with the wisdom of years, stood before the assembled masses. Raymond's voice carried across the plaza. "We gather today to remember those who gave everything for our shared future." Cade's bioluminescence pulsed in solemn agreement. "Their sacrifice has forged a bond between our peoples stronger than steel." As the ceremony progressed, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Where was Naira, the legendary hybrid warrior who had led the final assault? Talara stepped onto the dais, her face gaunt and her eyes haunted. She raised a hand, and the whispers fell silent. "Friends," she began, her voice hoarse, "I bring news of Naira." The crowd leaned forward, eager for word of their hero. Talara took a deep breath. "In the aftermath of our victory, Naira was gravely wounded. The bioweapon, it infected her on a genetic level." Gasps and cries of dismay echoed through the plaza. "To save her life, we had no choice," Talara continued. "Naira has entered voluntary hibernation. She will sleep for 1,000 years until a cure can be found." A hush fell over the gathering. Talara activated a hollow projector, and an image flickered to life. Naira lay within a crystalline sarcophagus, her eyes open but unseeing. As the freezing process reached its final stage, Naira's voice echoed through the plaza. "When you wake me, our struggle will be over. Judge then if the price was worth pop. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Kaid stepped forward, her luminescence pulsing with emotion. Naira's sacrifice ensures peace for generations to come. We must honor her by building the future she fought for. Raymond nodded solemnly. Let her slumber be a reminder of the cost of hatred and the value of unity. In the days that followed, Talara oversaw construction of a vast memorial shrine. At its heart stood Naira's sarcophagus, a beacon of hope and a somber warning. On the eve of her departure, Talara stood before the frozen form of her friend and commander. She placed a hand on the cool crystal surface. I'll find a way to bring you back, she whispered, no matter how long it takes. As Talara turned to leave, her eyes fell on the data crystal recovered from Oberon's base. A chill ran down her spine as a terrible suspicion took root. What if Naira's exposure hadn't been an accident? With rekindled purpose, Talara boarded her ship. A fleet of hybrid and Chalnoth scientists awaited her command. Their mission, to scour the galaxy for a cure, and perhaps uncover the truth behind Naira's fate. As the fleet lifted off, the citizens of the colony world watched with mixed emotions. Hope for Naira's eventual return mingled with uncertainty about the future. The age of conflict might be over, but new challenges lay on the horizon. In the shrine, Naira slept on, oblivious to the passage of time. Eons stretched before her, promising a world beyond imagining when she would finally awaken.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.